Good, happy Sunday, everyone. I'm Riley King, and welcome to this week and this edition of Politics with Riley King. I'm Riley King, and let's begin. This week's edition of Politics with Riley King is Sunday, February 16, 2020. Let's get started. The New Hampshire primary from the POV of local journalists. New Hampshire in a nutshell. Let's take a look at this video.
The last podcast on the left has long been a haven for all things hilariously horrifying. We invite you to join us in our very own utopian podcast paradise. Join us and listen to the last podcast on the left, free, now only on Spotify.
Now that both first-in-the-nation states have had their say, 8 Democratic candidates remain in the presidential race. After Iowa's messy caucuses, New Hampshire's primary was a welcome return to form. What went wrong in Iowa, and what went right in New Hampshire? The outcome of the Iowa caucuses was one that no one predicted. For days, the results were delayed.
Iowa Democrats demand better of us. Quite frankly, we demand better of ourselves.
After 4 days of tallying the votes, the Iowa Democratic Party revealed a near tie between Bernie Sanders and Pete Buttigieg. The Republican caucuses in Iowa and the Republican primary in New Hampshire both ended swiftly and with no surprises. Incumbent candidate Donald Trump easily secured a win. While both states hold first-in-the-nation claims, New Hampshire has the honor of being the first official ballot in all elections. It's actually a state law, and after the issues that plagued the caucuses in Iowa, Democratic candidates looked to New Hampshire for a new chance at success. As the candidates, their campaign staff, and the media relocated to New Hampshire, you can imagine how hectic things got in the Granite State.
It's just a frenzy. It's just crazy. You never know what's going to happen in these 8 days between Iowa and New Hampshire. We're building up to this kind of crescendo in the final week before the New Hampshire primary. We have candidates in and out of here all the time. We've had upwards of 20 Democrats and at least hundreds of media from throughout not just the country, but the world. Hotels in Manchester, Concord, Nashua, and nearby parts of Massachusetts, and probably as far down as Boston, are totally booked. They're booked years in advance. The networks will take out whole floors. We here at WMUR, we're going to endeavor to cover every candidate. It doesn't matter where they are in the polls.
John DeStaso has spent the past 40 years covering politics in New Hampshire. He's the political reporter for WMUR, the only network-affiliated local news station in the state.
I came to WMUR in time for the 2016 cycle. Previously, I was for 34 years with a local newspaper. I was a correspondent. I was very young. That's how, kind of a stringer. You know, if there's a fire, you cover a fire. If there's a presidential candidate, you cover the presidential candidate. And that's how I sort of got started in this and became familiar with the primary way back in the 1980 cycle. People like Ronald Reagan and George H.W. Bush. So all the way through then, I became more and more the political reporter at the local newspaper. And I've covered many primaries, many. 11th right now, actually.
Campaigns considered New Hampshire the first hurdle in elections more than 20 years before Iowa gained significance.
Our primary has been around a lot longer than the Iowa caucuses, at least as far as I know in terms of prominence. The very first one was in March of 1916. It was not first in the nation in that very first time. It trailed Indiana and Michigan. By 1920, the 2 states that had been ahead of New Hampshire dropped their primaries or moved them. So as of 1920 and ever since, we've been first.
It wasn't until the 1952 election that the New Hampshire primary caught the national media's attention because of the role it played in ousting incumbent Harry S. Truman.
He didn't want to run in the primary. He actually lost the primary to another Democrat. 3 weeks later, he decided not to run for re-election. So the New Hampshire primary had a lot to do with that. We had it by default. No one challenged us. And then that was codified in 1975 with a state law saying the New Hampshire primary must be held at least 7 days ahead of any, and this is the key word, similar election. So the Iowa caucuses are not similar. They're caucuses.
In the years since becoming state law, politicians have been outspoken about wanting to change up the primary order.
Just about every cycle, there are officials from other states trying to change the rules. New Hampshire is not diverse enough. New Hampshire has no right to hold this privileged position.
We can't say to black women, oh, thank you, you're the ones that are powering our victories in places like Alabama and in 2018, and then turn around and start our nominating contest in the 2 states that have barely any black people in them.
That's why they added Nevada for more diversity. And of course, there's South Carolina, which has a very big African-American population and is also diverse. What order should they be in? That's up to really the parties to decide. The state law will always put New Hampshire ahead of any similar election.
In New Hampshire, a few very small towns hold the distinct honor of being first of the first.
There are a couple other very small towns up in that area that vote at midnight. Hart's Location and a town called Millsfield. But we and all the national media flock to Dixville Notch. It's been 60 years now that the tiny town of Dixville Notch, which is actually very close to the Canadian border, began voting literally at midnight.
The town moderator's father started the tradition. In a town that only has 6 residents, the town moderator is crucial to helping run the vote.
You didn't want to have to drive to Berlin to vote. That's as simple as that.
They actually did not have enough voters until just a few weeks ago when the owner of a major resort up there wanted to restore the tradition, so he moved in from Maine so they have enough election officials where they can hold a vote. So there'll be a vote at midnight in Dixville Notch again.
Exactly at midnight, the first vote was cast in Dixville Notch, and with only 5 registered voters, it wasn't long before the voting was complete and the polls were closed. And when those votes were counted, it was Mike Bloomberg on top with 3 write-in votes. This despite the fact that the former New York City mayor never campaigned in New Hampshire.
Dixville Notch is not always accurate in its picking of the winners, but it's just fun to watch.
After the New Hampshire primaries concluded, 3 Democratic candidates, Andrew Yang, Michael Bennet, and Deval Patrick, suspended their campaigns, leaving 8 remaining. For the second week, Bernie Sanders and Pete Buttigieg were in a close fight, with Klobuchar holding on to a strong 3rd position.
Let me take this opportunity to thank the people of New Hampshire for a great victory tonight. Thanks to you, a campaign that some said shouldn't be here at all has shown that we are here to stay.
Thank you, New Hampshire. We are on to Nevada because the best is yet to come.
Next up, Nevada and South Carolina, 2 states that are a demographic contrast from the first-in-the-nation states. Candidates like Biden and Warren are looking to these for a boost to keep them in the race. For Mike Bloomberg, who bypassed Iowa and New Hampshire completely, it's his first chance to show himself as a competitor in the field.
We have Nevada, a big debate which will include Michael Bloomberg, the former mayor of New York City. He may not be on the ballot, but he's certainly a part of the conversation because of his money and ability to run a national campaign.
Mr. Vice President, do you think it sends a bad message to your supporters that you're not going to stay for the results tonight?
No, it doesn't send a bad message. I'm going to be talking to them tonight, and I'm going to stay here. We're going to campaign to the end and get in the plane and get down and get things moving in South Carolina, and then head off to Nevada from there.
Our campaign is built for the long haul. And we are just getting started.
I've been covering news in New Hampshire for literally 40 years. I'm looking forward to kind of taking a breather after this primary. I'm not getting any younger, but in a way it keeps you young because the energy level just picks up every day, really. I'm looking forward now to seeing what happens here at the end of this campaign because it's so unpredictable right now.
After 11 primaries, John has an endless supply of stories to tell, but some moments stick out more than others.
In 2000, one of my people I covered the most was, of course, John McCain. And just the sense of humor that he had was incredible. 2-time primary winner. He was challenging George W. Bush. They were in a real battle here, and McCain ended up winning and went on to be the nominee. So there's a photo of me and McCain. So the last time he was in here a couple of years ago, before he died, I showed McCain that picture, and he said, January 31st, 2000, Portsmouth. And that was the day before the New Hampshire primary of 2000. I didn't prompt him, I'm just very humbled. I don't have a really big ego about this after all these years. It's just part of my job. When you think back, like sitting here now, I've chosen to stay in New Hampshire because I just love the state. It's just incredible the amount of people I've had the opportunity to meet and cover, and a lot of the stories that I've written. Why would I want to go somewhere else, really?
Now that the first in the nation states have had their say, are you ready for the rest of the primaries? For more information on how to register and vote in your state, check out the links in our description. I'm Alexandra Stone, and this has been your Weekly Dispatch.
Okay, and there you go on that video. Very cool video there. Hopefully you all enjoyed watching it as well. Endorsements appear to have had little effect in New Hampshire primary. Let's take a listen to that video from WMUR News 9, Adam Sexton.
When Congresswoman Annie Kuster announced her support for Pete Buttigieg, it may have been the only consequential endorsement of the 2020 New Hampshire primary, giving the former South Bend mayor a little establishment validation that perhaps made some voters more comfortable with such a youthful candidate. Otherwise, this cycle was notable for its major endorsements making even less of a difference than they did in 2016. That's when Hillary Clinton lost with the backing of almost every big-name Democrat in the state, and Donald Trump won with minimal support from local elected Republicans. This time around, Cory Booker won over several state reps and senators, but then had to drop out. Joe Biden had former Governor John Lynch and former Congresswoman Carol Shea Porter in his corner, and he came in fifth. Former Congressman Dick Sweat's endorsement of Biden drew national attention by going viral last August, but not in a way that really helped the campaign. Senator Jeanne Shaheen, facing a high-profile re-election bid, sat this primary out and did not endorse. But unexpectedly, so did Senator Maggie Hassan and Congressman Chris Pappas. Even though the power of endorsements may have faded, top New Hampshire strategists say don't expect campaigns to give them up.
It is part of what we evaluate how campaigns are doing before the votes are cast. And so looking at fundraising totals, looking at those endorsements, because that's where the first competition is.
This endorsement game works two ways, and there's one alliance formed in this 2020 primary that could shape a statewide race later this year.
Bernie Sanders is the most articulate.
When executive counselor and Democratic candidate for governor Andrew Volinsky endorsed Bernie Sanders, Sanders returned the favor. Whether it makes a difference remains to be seen. Adam Sexton, WMUR News 9.
Okay, and there you go on that video and that report. And on Thursday, February 13th, Governor Chris Sununu did his State of the State address. Sununu unveils plans for workplace fairness, vets, suicide, long-term care, and State of State address. Let's take a listen to that video from WMUR News 9.
Everyone uses their phone differently. That's why Xfinity Mobile lets you auto-connect to millions of secure Wi-Fi hotspots and the best LTE everywhere else. It's a different kind of wireless network designed to save you money. That's simple, easy, awesome. Call, visit, or go to XfinityMobile.com.
Secretary of State Bill Gardner, Dave Scanlon, we say thank you, sir. Great job.
A standing ovation for election officials at the State of the State address after a flawless first-in-the-nation primary with record turnout.
I certainly appreciated right off the bat his thanking all of the local municipal officials who participated in our election process on Tuesday when the eyes of the nation and the world were upon us.
There was also bipartisan agreement for taking a hard line on upholding water quality standards and improving long-term care for seniors. But another fight is looming on the issue of paid family and medical leave. The governor is backing a Senate Republican bill similar to his previous proposals to use state employees to create the necessary pool to jumpstart the system.
Senator Jeb Bradley's bill, which I wholeheartedly support, has been vetted by insurance officials, and it's the only shot of delivering a viable, voluntary, paid family leave program that doesn't contain an income tax. Let's not miss this opportunity.
Democrats say they're open to compromise, but want to ensure the program will be accessible to low-income workers.
I think we're close. The governor says he wants something, but he always comes a step short of what is something that is actually going to help people out in the streets and help the people in New Hampshire.
Another point of contention is the doorway system to help address the opioid crisis. The governor called it a success today, but city officials in Manchester have expressed a very different viewpoint about that. But overall, this looked like an upbeat and confident governor heading into what is expected to be a very hard-fought re-election year. Reporting live in Concord, Adam Sexton, WMUR News Now.
Okay, and there you go on that video and that report. Now that the New Hampshire primaries have gone and passed, now we move on and focus on Nevada. Early voting begins in Nevada. Let's take a listen to that video from ABC News.
Next to politics in the race for 2020. Early voting now underway in Nevada, a key caucus state that is next up. The Democratic candidates zeroing in on that Western contest and gearing up for yet another debate. Here's ABC's Rachel Scott.
Tonight, the Democratic race for president swings west. Candidates flooding the state of Nevada with the caucuses here just 1 week away. Senator Bernie Sanders bringing his supporters straight to the polls, leading a march as early voting gets underway. Senator Bernie Sanders riding a wave of enthusiasm after his New Hampshire victory, brushing off criticism from some union leaders who are slamming his Medicare for All proposal. Senator, any concern about possibly losing union votes?
Well, you just watching this?
Yes, I was.
Okay, I've never been to. We have about 700 people marching at the vote. We're feeling absolutely great.
Former Vice President Joe Biden, hoping for a boost, says he has a shot at placing top 2 in Nevada.
99% of the African American vote hasn't spoken yet, and 99% of the Latino vote hasn't spoken yet.
Nevada is the first test to see which candidates can appeal to minority voters. Why should they give your campaign a chance?
Well, I need to get to know them because my name ID wasn't very high, my bank account not as big.
Though he is skipping the state, former New York City Mayor Michael Bloomberg is closing in on the debate stage here. As his profile in this race grows, so does the scrutiny around his past. Just this week, Bloomberg taking heat for his previous comments on racial discrimination in lending, a practice known as redlining and stop and frisk.
I should have acted sooner, and I should have stopped it, and I didn't, and I apologize for that.
The Washington Post reporting on allegations of sexism at his company that have dogged Bloomberg for years, as reported recently by ABC News. His spokesperson responding, saying Mike simply does not tolerate any kind of discrimination or harassment. And the Drudge Report claiming Bloomberg is considering announcing 2016 Democratic nominee Hillary Clinton as a running mate. His campaign telling ABC News tonight, we are focused on the primary and the debate, not VP speculations. Voters are already in line as early voting kicks off. The Nevada Democratic Party has revamped its strategy after the chaos during the Iowa caucuses, scrapping its plans to use an app and instead using a new tool to better calculate the results. Tom?
That caucus just 1 week away. All right, Rachel, thank you.
Okay, and there you go on that video and that report. Tensions growing between President and Attorney General. Let's take a listen to that video from ABC News.
The latest in the apparent growing tensions between President Trump and the Attorney General. Bill Barr appearing to make a rare break with the president he has fiercely defended when he told ABC News this week the president's tweets make it impossible for him to do his job. And now new tweets from the president about the Justice Department. ABC's Kira Phillips reports from West Palm Beach.
It was a rare and bold move.
In an exclusive interview with ABC, Attorney General Bill Barr declaring the president's tweets make it impossible for him to do his job.
It's time to stop the tweeting of bad Department of Justice criminal cases.
Then the president today, in true Trump fashion, doubling down, firing off yet another tweet about another DOJ case involving one of his favorite targets, former acting FBI Director Andrew McCabe. After federal prosecutors formally closed its 2-year investigation into McCabe, declining to bring charges, the president writing McCabe misled investigators over role in news media disclosure. Yesterday, McCabe lashed out at the Justice Department for the investigation.
It is an absolute disgrace that they took 2 years and put my family through this experience for 2 years before they finally drew the obvious conclusion and one they could have drawn a long time ago.
Barr's blunt interview was a stunning show of dissent from the president's inner circle, but that wasn't enough to stop the tweeting. President Trump claiming, though he's never directly intervened in a case, this doesn't mean that I do not have, as president, the legal right to do so. I do, but I have so far chosen not to.
Tom, it seems that President Trump feels emboldened since his acquittal, proving no matter who it is, that even with a warning from a White House ally, he is going to tweet and speak his mind. Tom?
Okay, and there you go on that video and that report. And that is it for this Sunday edition of Politics with Riley King. I hope you all enjoyed watching this Sunday edition of Politics with Riley King. Have a great rest of your Sunday. I'll see you back here next Sunday for another edition of Politics with Riley King. And have a great rest of your week as well, everyone. Goodbye.